It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman. We're joined this morning by Dale Ahlquist, who is going to talk with us about a short history of G.K. Chesterton, which is not the first book that he's written about Chesterton. It's called Night of the Holy Ghost. Thanks for being here, Dale.
Kyle, great to be with you. God bless you.
Thank you. How many books have you written on Chesterton?
Only 5, so it's not spectacular.
I feel like pretty soon there's going to be like this tipping point where you write more books about Chesterton than books that Chesterton actually wrote himself. Is that something you worry about?
That means I need to only write 95 more books, so I've got a little ways to go.
All right, well, there's time. So if you could only read 3 of his books for the rest of your life, what would you choose?
Well, that's a horrible question, especially this early in the morning. But it's interesting. His book Orthodoxy about conversion to Christianity is really a fundamental Chesterton text, and that would probably have to be on the list. And then the other one that probably has to be on the list is his book The Everlasting Man, which is basically a book about everything, showing that Jesus Christ is the whole hinge of history, and everything can be explained only by the Christian understanding. But the third book would probably be the real surprise, and that would be his book on Charles Dickens.
Huh. That makes your top 3. Good.
Yeah, those are the top 3. His book on Charles Dickens is just a wonderful book about hope and humanity, and everything in it is surprising and wonderful.
Huh. What first drew you to Chesterton?
Well, I was an evangelical, Kyle. I was a Baptist, and I was a big C.S. Lewis fan.
Okay.
As most evangelicals are, and it turns out that the one who's really behind C.S. Lewis, his great influence, was G.K. Chesterton. So finally I decided to sort of get to the source, and it was the book that I mentioned, The Everlasting Man, that was responsible for C.S. Lewis becoming a Christian.
So with that, did you ever consider going by your first 2 initials and your last name in the wake of C.S. Lewis and G.K. Chesterton?
I've never considered that, but if I did, it would be D.C. Ahlquist, okay? But I'm never going to plan on doing that.
Missed opportunity. So Chesterton seems to really be having a resurgence in popularity recently. Why do you think that is?
Well, people, of course, are just discovering his writings and realizing how profound, but mostly about how pertinent he is. Chesterton, even though he lived and wrote 100 years ago, seems to be describing the time that we live in right now. And he's very prophetic, and he's just a very good guide for the contemporary malaise that we're facing, the attack on the family, the attack on reason, the isolation that people are feeling, and certainly the sadness and the depression that people are experiencing. Chesterton is an apostle not only of common sense, but of joy and hope and reason. He argues well, and I think all those things are very attractive. They're attracted to his goodness, but he's a great writer, a great wit.
And it says that on the book. He's known as the Prince of Paradox and an Apostle of Common Sense. Where do those 2 titles come from?
Well, they were starting to call him Prince of Paradox in his own time because he has this way of taking an idea and twisting it inside out so that you see it better. And, when he says the self is more distant than any star, and if we worship nature, we become unnatural. Great little twists like that. But as far as Apostle of Common Sense, well, I'm the one who gave him that title, Kyle.
Okay, great. We're talking with Dale Ahlquist. He is not only author of several books on G.K. Chesterton, also the president of the American Chesterton Society. Talking about the book that he wrote, A Short History of G.K. Chesterton. It's titled Night of the Holy Ghost. Where does that title come from?
Okay, that one's a good one. When Chesterton's Requiem Mass, it is the title of a poem that was written about him by Walter de la Mare, the great English novelist and poet who was a friend of Chesterton's. And the image of Chesterton doing battle with the modern world in the form of a knight is an image that actually continued to recur during his lifetime. He himself was compared with St. George, and that's why that title applied to him.
Huh. So what would you say is the most admirable thing about his life?
Well, Chesterton was a journalist. We talked about the 100 books he wrote, but the books are only a fraction of what he wrote. He was a journalist and was a very popular writer during his lifetime, but used the newspapers to evangelize. He wrote for the secular press and for the secular world, and yet always pointed to God and was able to dismantle modern secular relativist thinking in a secular setting, which I think he really was a model of what a lay evangelist and a lay Catholic should be.
Do you think that kind of writings would work in today's newspapers?
Well, I think Chesterton is a model of how to argue with your opponent because he was so respectful. People were drawn to him because he was amiable and friendly, and he never condemned people. He only went after bad ideas and bad thinking. So he'd always start by agreeing with his opponent about the thing that they had in common, and then kind of showing, well, but this is where this idea leads, and this is the question that you seem to be avoiding. And when he pointed to God, he did it in a way that didn't offend, in a way that drew people to the truth.
Yeah.
Would it work today? Well, I think the fact is, if you read Chesterton, you see that it still does work today.
So another thing, he was known for his sense of humor. Do you have a favorite antidote from his life?
Well, there's great stories about how absent-minded he was, because he says that absent-mindedness is simply present-mindedness about something else. And, he's the kind of guy who'd walk out in the middle of the street reading a book, and all the traffic would just stop for him. He was just oblivious of the fact that there was another world going on around him, because he was so into his next deadline that he had to write for, or the book that he was reading. He'd pick up a book at a bookstall and start reading it, and then absentmindedly walk away with it. But the bookstore owner would recognize it was Chester and just simply send the bill to his wife.
Yeah.
Take care of it. So there's good stories. The fact that he once hailed a cab to take him to the offices of his own newspaper, GK's Weekly, and didn't know the address of his own office, and the newspaper, the cab driver had to buy a copy of the newspaper at a newspaper stand to get the address. So it's good things like that. But then, of course, some of his great wit when he says the Bible tells us to love our neighbors and love our enemies, generally because of the same person.
Right. A lot of those, the stories of him kind of bumbling around and stuff sound like a Mr. Bean movie or something like that. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, I mean, he was. That's what's so great. He's this comic character and amiable and delightful character, and yet what's so amazing is how profound he could get. Just go into a deep truth, and it shocks you that what you think is a clown, think of a buffoon, is someone that could influence C.S. Lewis, influence Gandhi, influence world leaders and major authors because of his profound insight. That's the great twist with Chesterton.
Yeah. Balancing the humor, the joy, the maybe goofiness at times with the intellectual and the, I guess, the spiritual as well. Your book has 3 chapters, yes. The Man, the Writer, and the Saint, the third of which, the Saint, has a question mark behind it. Do you think Chesterton is a saint?
Well, I do. I have to say that when I was on my own spiritual journey, my own pilgrimage to the Catholic Church, it was Chesterton who was my friend and my guide, and he made me understand what the communion of the saints was, and I certainly had no doubt about it as he led the way. And the way someone becomes a saint, Kyle, is there's a devotion to him, and it's the people who are devoted to him who bring who bring the cause to the church and say, we believe this one is a saint, and it's not the saint that goes out and the church doesn't go out and appoint saints. The church receives those who petition for someone to become a saint.
Right. So what are some of the things that you think make him saintly?
Well, I think there's evidence of his heroic virtue during his own lifetime, his great humility, his service to others. There's great stories of his goodness and the way he helped the poor, helped beggars, the way people who were really opponents of the church were drawn to his goodness. And I think one of the best stories is of H.G. Wells, famous writer, wrote War of the Worlds and The Invisible Man, and was very much the skeptic and was really a very immoral man. But Chesterton was his friend, and they spent time together, and I don't think Chesterton made a lot of headway in convincing H.G. Wells to become a Catholic or anything, but I will say that when Chesterton died, H.G. Wells went to Chesterton's widow and said, if there's any chance of me getting into heaven, it's going to be because I was a friend of G.K. Chesterton.
Wow. That's awesome. And also another 2 initial and last name author. So we're up to 3 now. I'm just saying. So, I mean, you can't spend much time on Catholic Twitter or following Catholic people on Instagram and not find quotes from Chesterton. Why do you think people should read his full books and articles if they like these quotes that they're seeing?
Well, chocolate chips are good, but the whole cookie is even better, man.
That is the perfect answer.
It's fun to see how he develops an argument and how he picks apart a bad argument, but the way he just converges on the truth and comes at it from all angles, no matter what he writes about. And he writes about everything. He will shed light on it. He is someone who is just a great human teacher who's always pointing to the truth and really a great defender of the Catholic faith. He himself was a convert, and he was the maker of many other converts. I should just mention, I've also come out with another book just at the same time as this one, which I didn't write the whole book, I edited it, but it's called My Name is Lazarus, and it's 34 conversion stories of people who, reading Chesterton, were brought to the Catholic faith. And there are former Muslims, Jews, atheists, agnostics, and as well as every strain of Protestantism that you could think of. All of them, Chesterton was the one who was their guide to the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Well, where can people pick up a copy of your book, Night of the Holy Ghost, A Short History of G.K. Chesterton, and maybe this other book that you're talking about?
Yeah. My name is Lazarus. Go to chesterton.org. That's our website, chesterton.org. If they go to chesterton.com, they're going to get hydraulic valves. So it's important that they go to the .org.
Yes.
And you'll learn more about Chesterton from our website, but the 2 books are available there. And it's important that they buy them from chesterton.org and not from that river in South America, Kyle, which is not a Catholic apostolate.
Okay. Good to know. All right. Again, the book is called Night of the Holy Ghost, A Short History of G.K. Chesterton by Dale Ahlquist. Thank you so much, Dale, for sharing a little bit about Chesterton's life with us. Appreciate it.
My blessing. God bless.